I gotta talk.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Again, our Board of Finance regular meeting for November 9th. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Any public input? No one's here from the public. Any correspondence, Rick? No. Nothing? Okay. So everybody has the minutes from the from the May 2nd special meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the meeting, the minutes from our May 2nd, 2023 meeting.
Motion. We have a motion, we have a second. Anybody corrections or any abstentions? Is everybody there? I think. That one, I think everybody was really good.
Bobby Joe is not.
Bobby Joe was not there. Great. All right. Without any changes, I'll try everybody's mind. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Cynthia. Okay, let the record show. Again, we asked to have this, the tax stabilization policy, to go over it, to make sure everybody understood what was going on. We asked Brad to talk with Marty. So Brad, if you can, talk about this.
Sure. So there's the two pieces of it. There's a tax stabilization fund, which was started last year, and the fund balance, which is 10 years old, but was updated last year. So I talked to Marty today about the tax stabilization fund first. So the tax stabilization fund was done as an ordinance, which I thought gave it a lot more teeth than a policy, but in Bethel, it really doesn't. So the ordinance, if you remember how we got there, the Board of Selectmen looked at it, the Board of Finance looked at it. Then the Board of Selectmen held a public hearing, took input, and then the Board of Selectmen set the ordinance for it. So to use the tax stabilization fund to move money from the fund balance into this tax stabilization fund, we'd still need a town meeting to do it, because the ordinance was only done through a public hearing, because that's how Bethel does their ordinances. The public's really had no chance to vote on it. So the public didn't vote on this being just giving the Board of Finance the ability to do it through the tax stabilization fund. This is the ruling I got from Marty today. So if you're gonna use fund balance to put it in this, you'd have to still approve it under the same method you would using any other fund balance. So under $1 million, you go to town meeting. Over $1 million, you need, and that was the ruling that I got from him today. I thought the ordinance made it so we didn't have to do that piece. But that's what he told me as of today.
So, I mean, I'm sorry, if we have extra money from a year,
Yeah.
can we transfer that into that? How do we fund it, us? You know, do we have to fund it like CNR in the beginning on the budget process? Or can we put in extra money and transfer it?
So you can put extra money or fund balance into this account. But you'd still have to then go through the process of having a town meeting the town meeting would vote on moving the money from fund balance into the tax stabilization fund.
Okay.
Okay, can I start? Because
Yeah.
I've been really for the last year trying to put my hand around this, right? So originally, we created this account, the tax stabilization, to put money in it to offset a wild year where we're almost ready to propose a higher than normal or acceptable increase in taxes for the upcoming budget season, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And we thought that we needed this to take extra fund balance money that we thought we didn't have to have that much in that account, put it in there and then have it in that account to then reduce a crazy spike in increase in taxes 1 year.
Yeah, so all that is correct. So that is what it did. What the ruling I got from Marty today is the mechanism of how you put the money in there. So the Board of Finance would vote to use fund balance to put it in there, which would then have to trigger a special town meeting, for the special town meeting to approve the funds going in there. The other thing this did was set forth that the town of Bethel recognizes that at times we may want to be able to control our mill rate increases through a tax stabilization fund. So it's also for the rating agencies to look at and go, all right, they dump fund balance in there to sometime later on. Use to stabilize the mill rate without them this going, you're just buying down your mill rate.
Right, because we had a policy in place, and that's why we couldn't just use that balance fund to say, hey, here's some money to bring that percentage down.
Correct. It shows a long-term goal instead of a reaction.
And we set that policy because we were having 22% in the balance fund, and we just looked for a vehicle to get that out.
That was part of it, yes. It was a way that you can take when times are good to balance out when times aren't as good.
Okay, and so, and I apologize, Nick. My last question is, so if we thought that the CNR account did not have enough for something we're projecting in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
We could also do the same thing from the balance fund, have a town meeting to infuse some money into the CNR account.
Yeah, but that would be done through the fund balance policy.
Yes, oh,
Fund
absolutely, I'm
balance
sorry, yes,
policy
yeah,
allows you
I
to do
just,
that.
yeah, got it.
Right, I thought you were mistaken.
Yep.
Robert?
Yeah, a little bit of history, which I
Yeah.
think puts this in context. And maybe I'd suggest we go back to Marty. I'll get to that point too. But point one is this was something that Matt raised a while ago.
Yeah.
4 years. And it was a great idea. But at the time, we had short-term debt outstanding. And it made, right, if you think about managing a household, you try to pay off your high interest rate credit card balance, which was what the short-term debt was, before we start putting money into savings account. So what we did was we kind of tabled it a number of years ago when Matt first raised it, paid off our short-term debt, and then passed this last week.
Yeah.
With the intent, I believe, to use it in a way that was even broader than what John mentioned. But again, to the benefit of the taxpayer, by saying, we know we collect 99.x% a year. Let's say 1, 2, 3, whatever.
Yeah, last year was over 100 because of the past.
There was some past
prior
debt
year,
coming
yeah.
in.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And we've had that discussion.
Yeah, you like more than you all, yeah, I understand.
Well, it was high.
Yeah.
Higher than what we use for projections each year, right?
Yeah.
We project revenue at 98.7.
Correct.
So every year we were taking in from the taxpayer, let's just say 3.3 percentage points more than what we were budgeting. And so the tax stabilization fund was a way to say, look, if we're already in compliance with the fund balance policy, the rating agencies are gonna love us. You don't need to get double love, right? Love is fine
Right.
from the rating agencies. And then we could take this extra and just kind of stick it in a revenue number for the following year, so that the taxpayer is getting the benefit for the money they already gave us. So I think it was meant to, and that's what it kind of was, tax stabilization, tax equalization, but
Yeah.
that had some other connotations. But that was one of the additional purposes for that fund.
Yeah, and some of our neighboring towns every year take some of their fund balance and balance their mill rate with it, for lack of a better term. They've done, like, I know Southbury does it, or has in the past, like 4 years ago when I asked them about it. They don't get hit over the head with it because they have a history of doing it. So it's not something new that they started doing, and I don't think Southbury is AAA either, that is part of it.
And look, for us, we don't have the history because we just started it.
Yeah.
So I think we need to create that history.
Yeah.
And it's not a big number, right? We talked about $500,000 being the
Yeah.
maximum annual transfer. Now, that's a lot of money, but in the context of setting a mill rate, it's. I don't know, it's a
0.2 mils.
decimal, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it was meant to have that broad purpose, which kind of feeds into my second point, which is, look, if we can't do this as a board of finance, I would suggest we go back to Marty and say, well, then let's have that town meeting. And let's get this so that we can do it. It clearly is the intent. When we read the policy, it talks about, the tax stabilization fund may be funded when possible by the board of finance. That certainly was the intention.
Yeah.
The intention was not to bring it to a public meeting like this for
Yeah.
formality.
Yeah.
Right, but rather to give us the ability
Yeah.
to kind of continue to, well, as I said in the policy, right? Appropriately manage the budget for our town and that next coming season. So again, I'm rambling, but I'll bring my ramble to an end.
No,
I would just think, look, that was the intention, that this board could use the tax stabilization fund.
Yeah.
In setting the budget. It leads to the other ancillary issues about, we gotta get the financial statements earlier than we did this year.
Yeah.
Right, so that we have it in advance of the contemplation of the budget, so we know whether we have fund balance policy met with the extra 500,000.
Yeah.
The lateral issue, right, but we
Yeah.
need that, so we should probably talk to Joe about making sure we
Yeah.
get the financial statements earlier. But going back to Marty's, well, can we cure? If there is an area, can we cure it by going to a town meeting and making sure that, you know, the intent is put in place, that this board can move the money. Just like we do the excess expenses.
I wonder if it would make sense for the Board of Finance to make a request to the Board of Selectmen, because I think it would have to then go back to the Board of Selectmen. To do the next steps of that, if there is something stronger than an ordinance. Short of a charter change, right? Like, if there's a charter change that allowed you to do it. But I think the charter change is like the extreme version of that. If there's an in-between that we could take. To your point, I think it makes sense to explore having a town meeting. To fully ratify, or whatever the term is, the tax stabilization fund. So that the Board of Finance can use it to its full purpose.
right, the policy was made for us to use it as a tool, but we can't use it. We're waiting for the people to tell us to use it, so,
Well,
Dan,
they use it, we're just waiting for their approval.
no, what I'm saying is. We need a way to fund it, and we don't have a way to fund it unless we go to a town meeting.
No, I know, but we're still deciding how we're gonna fund it, they're just.
We can't use the money unless it's in there.
We can't use this without going to this organization. And that was not the intent.
Exactly, it says it's supposed to be for us, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
to use it. Dan, would you be okay with
Yeah,
looking into that?
I think, yeah, I think we should, and maybe we should also go back and talk to Marty about it.
Yeah.
I don't fully understand why the ordinance wasn't enough, but
It doesn't sound like there's enough teeth, I mean, you know what I mean, it's,
Yeah.
you know, we're not talking about dog poop on the street, you know what I mean, we're talking about a
Well, like-
policy here.
If it wasn't gonna be enough. Teeth, to your point, to do anything, why isn't it just a policy?
Right,
And how
it
is
it doesn't make sense that we can't transfer money with
Exactly.
our own accounts. We're not spending the money, we're not raising the money, we're not.
that's what Cynthia came up with first, it seemed like there's a missing part here.
Yeah.
So if we can fix it, then we can use it as a tool.
And like Bob and I talked the other day, and it was my understanding at the time that the ordinance did that. Because why else would we go to the step of doing an ordinance?
Right, that's what,
Exactly.
So, and then Marty's point today was, we just held a public hearing. And you could have had 50 people there that all said, we don't want it. At a public hearing, it's just input. The Board of Selectmen could have then still turned around and go, okay, we're doing it anyway. So I think that's the teeth of it. Is it's just still then the board doing it and not. The town voting on it in
Right.
some sense.
maybe we can refer this to the Board of Selectmen.
yeah.
And couch it in the way of, with the Board of Selectmen review with the town attorney, how we can, not necessarily can we. How do we get it to be so that we can do?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And have the
Yeah.
power that this ordinance was intended to have.
Yeah.
Just to grant us the ability to just allocate, like, again, do annually, yeah, excess expenses.
Cynthia, is there anything you want to add to it? Or do you think we covered it?
Oh, I second Bob's rant. I like Bob's
I'll make a
rant.
motion to send it back to the first, the Board of Selectmen, and you seconded that?
Yes. Yeah,
Dan, you know what we're trying to do,
Yeah, 100%,
trying to use it.
makes complete sense.
Anybody have any other questions?
Just, you know, my first question was answered about 7 minutes ago. But, I'm just. A little, you know, confused. There was an ordinance passed. Yet it is meaningless because the town people didn't vote on the ordinance,
Exactly.
so it still has to go to a public hearing. In which the people can't vote on it anyways.
Well, it'd have to go to a town meeting.
The town,
So if
So town meeting.
under the current guidance by the town attorney. If the Board of Finance wanted to fund the tax stabilization fund. It would, they would make you guys, this board would make a motion, and they would have to, the Board of Selectmen would have to
Set up
set a
a-
date for a town meeting. It
Town
would have to
meeting.
be a town meeting for the public, to then vote on moving the money. And the request of the Board of Selectmen is to look into taking out that extra step every time we want to fund it. right, is my understanding.
So what about all the other ordinances that have been passed by this town? Are they too? Basically something without teeth? What I don't get, we passed an ordinance. We didn't have to do this. And yet we're being told that because the people didn't vote on the ordinance, it's really not an ordinance. But what about all the other ordinance through Bethel's history that have been passed?
That's what I don't understand is if he's looking at this, I haven't talked to him directly.
Yeah.
If he's looking at this as somehow that we have evaded a process that's in the charter in some way.
Yeah.
Because of the money transfer, then okay, maybe he has something to stand on, I don't know, but it doesn't make sense.
Totally not.
Because Board of Finance has the ability to move money around.
Well, they have the ability to use fund balance. But when they use fund balance, they have to go to a town meeting.
It's in the chart.
Is in the past of how.
Yeah.
Fund balance. is used.
Yes, Cynthia.
Well, just that I think that, I could be wrong, but the Board of Selectmen can call a special town meeting whenever they want to, for whatever reason they want to, and to enact an ordinance. I mean, I was part of a petition that was circulated to force a special town meeting to vote on, to enact an ordinance. And is that not true, Dan?
It's 100% true. The Board of Selectmen can call a town meeting.
Just call a special town meeting. Boom.
To kind of further highlight the absurdity of the point that Bill was making. Well, does this mean we can't apply the fund balance policy? Because it's only a policy.
Well, the fund balance policy all along. You can use it, but you still have to go through the same steps, which.
I am not the town attorney, but I am an attorney.
Yeah, I know.
It's just, I think.
Yeah.
I just think it's an eye-opening experience. I'm glad that the first selectman.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. But
In the future, if there is an ordinance being passed, you would know
Yeah,
that somehow people are gonna vote on it. Well, that's what this town attorney said. You might have to get another.
well, and I also just don't understand why when it went through the first time, this wasn't recognized. That this would be a hurdle of some kind.
Right. So you agree to look at it. So,
Well, yeah, you're gonna.
right.
Well, you consider a
All
way
in favor to send it back to the first selectman to speak with town council and get this handled? All in favor?
Aye.
The record show unanimous.
Can I make one other fund balance point? So one of the things we've talked about, so the annual report that was handed out last Tuesday. That shows our fund balance was 21.62. Which is high, which is above our 18%, above 20%. But I just wanted the board to keep in mind the stuff that we possibly have approved that could be taken out of fund balance. We still have the firing range, which was approved for $1.4 million, which as of 6:30, when that annual report was done, $0 had been spent of that 1.4. We had the Bethel High School HVAC, which could, in theory, use fund balance of just under 2.5 million. The official referendum talked about $2,480,007. If you like specificity, but whatever, it's that word, specificity. And the Board of Finance, through then a town meeting, approved purchasing the lot on South Street for $125,000, which was after 6:30. So if we get the grant from the state, from the HVAC, and we spend that all those equal $4,005,007. If all that money is spent, we'd have to decide where we're taking it from. And to Mr. Manfreda's point earlier, we've been trying to get away from short-term debt. Ideally, fund balance would be a great way to spend that money. But if you apply that $4 million, if you take it out of the $18 million we have in fund balance as of 6:30. Based on our 2024 budget, it put us at just under 16%. Obviously, we know there's gonna be more revenue in other years, but that's one of the reasons that, like, I didn't come to you earlier going, we should fund some of this tax legalization stuff. And I know Nick and I talked about, we don't know if the states are gonna ever give us the grant for HVAC. So if they don't, and that 2.4 million is gonna stay in fund balance, we should look at a way to move it.
And that's what we.
But ideally, it'd be nice to, if it does get approved, to not have to borrow money. If we have it in the the bank account.
But once we put it in that tax stabilization, and if the I'm sorry, if the school system came to us and said, oh, here's another plan. And what do you think about it? And if we thought we should fund it, it's trapped in there now. We can never use it.
Correct. If the thought was, what we could have done, and I was talking to Nick about this a little bit earlier. We could have before at some point taken it and put it in CNR. Because then you could always pull it from CNR. And I believe those two big projects that went to referendum, the firing range and the HVAC. It was written in such a way to be funded, decided by the Board of Finance.
Right.
Meaning you can
There's a
borrow
bunch
for
of
it, you
items, yeah.
can take fund balance, you can take CNR.
And you, yeah.
Because that's typically how we do those now, to not lock ourselves into one funding source.
Options, right?
Quick question, Brad, the 21.62% at June 30th, what is that in dollar amounts above, in the dollar amount above the 18%?
That's a good question. I just have the total dollar amount.
I bet you it's not 4 million.
3-1 or something.
Just under 3.2, 3,199,000.
And that's what would get us to a balanced fund of.
Yeah.
Of
And that's-
16%.
No,
That's-
18.
No, I mean, if we spent it all, it would be down to 16.
Right, if we use.
No, that's,
the
so his question was to
Yeah.
get down to 18.
No, I know, I got it, yeah.
And that's basing it. Fund balance. 6/30/22 against the 22 budget. Obviously, as the budget goes up. The 18% becomes a bigger number,
Oh.
becomes a bigger number.
Keeps moving. But again, if this all came true, we wouldn't be spending it, we'd be spending it, so after this next year, we'd have more revenue, so.
Yeah.
We'd have some more money, we wouldn't have to bond it,
Yeah, knock on wood, revenue continues to exceed budget.
there's the extra
That's
money
good.
we're short of,
Yeah,
so we don't get to 16%.
So, but again. You don't want to take it down sharply and then your budget goes up and then you go from 18 to you create a hole. Ideally, you're always trying to balance. What my budget's going up versus you almost like want to draw it down to the next level. So if your revenues come in right where they're supposed to be and fund balance doesn't grow, you're at your 18.
So I'm sorry, I got confused when you said that, Nick. So even though we know we need to spend 4 million, we only have 3 million, but we wouldn't be spending the 4 million today.
Right.
We spend it over time as revenue is going into the fund.
Correct.
We'd have other revenue sources.
Even if the
So we
state,
wouldn't have to bond the million because we would assume if everything goes well, that it catches up later.
yeah, and we talked about at previous meetings. We already know that the state has sent us more money than we budgeted for 23. Which it's in the comptroller's report, but like that number, we budgeted 282. And in that account alone, we've gotten 734. So you're talking $450,000 right there.
Right now.
So,
Okay, so Dan agreed to look at that, and we'll see what goes on with that, all right? There's another couple requests here. I don't, Dan, do you want to speak of this? I mean, you sent it to us from the Board of Selectmen.
Do you want to speak up before you open for discussion or just?
No, I'm gonna just find.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make a motion that we open the request that from the Board of Selectmen. I'm sorry, I'd like to make a motion that we open for discussion. The approval of 47,000 to demo and replace floors in main hallways.
Do we have a second for discussion?
Second motion.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank
Oh,
you,
sir, all in favor on that?
Oh, yeah, yeah, go.
Please.
Aye.
Aye. Please, Dan.
Okay, so kind of the backdrop on this request. So we looked at, well, first off, we did the project in the front hallway. And with that project, there's a possibility we may have a little money left over from ARPA. Because that was an ARPA project. We don't really know for sure what, when, how much. So we started thinking about this opportunity to stretch that along because we really have a need to do the tile floors on this side, this hallway. I don't know if you've taken a look out there. They're trip hazards. Frankly, we have kids running through here with park and rec stuff going on. Somebody's gonna take a face plant probably pretty soon. So it really does need to be done sooner than later. The other project that we've had kind of on the books is really, it's energy resource kind of thing with the summer coming. A lot of the blinds on the front of the building are broken. causing a problem for, you know, so many people work with computers and all that, but it's also just an energy issue. So those were two projects that we looked at. We were thinking, well, maybe we'll figure out a way to do it from ARPA. When we started having a discussion with the Board of Selectmen, it kind of came up that the philosophy of ARPA, I guess, was what we discussed. When we started the conversation, really it was Rich Straighten who kind of brought up Selectman Straighten said that, you know, before when ARPA came around, the idea was to use it for big things that the community would see because the community are the ones who suffered through the pandemic. I haven't seen it quite that way, just that there's more to it because we know from ARPA that a lot of the beginnings of ARPA was all about doing things that would help the community in general. They were always talking about police, fire, emergency services, those kinds of things. They actually brought it in the parks and things like that, especially in areas that were, you know, demographically challenged, I guess. That they had low income areas, things like that. That's what the park things about. But the previous administration kind of did open it up to use for a lot more stuff. Part of the justification of that is also that the way we track our ARPA funds, we track it as a certain amount of it as missing revenue or lost revenue. That's it, right? Lost revenue?
Yeah.
About $5 million or so, we could track as lost revenue. But at the same time, the whole intent of ARPA was to do things that help the community because of the pandemic. So with all that said, the conversation we had was, does regular building maintenance fall into that category? One of the things, you know, when I took over as first selectman here recently, we did a little cleanup as with Board of Selectmen on some of the things that were already on the docket. And things that we committed to with the town, specifically the lights at the track, that was kind of our part of the process of the grant, and a few other things like that. We also used it to do public safety things that would kind of put us in a better position when we're walking toward our budget, as we all know. Those I think were totally legit, especially paying public safety stuff. So now philosophically, we're looking at it, and I've kind of held back a little bit, let the dust settle, not be like spending like crazy person out of those funds. And looking again to put together a group where we can actually talk about it, figure out what's best for the town, what direction we're going to go, and not be in a big hurry because we have those funds. We don't have to allocate them till the end of 2024 and spend them by the end of 26. So we're not in a huge hurry from that part. But it gets back kind of the big picture again, like looking at what we're going to do long term. I think we're going to try to hold some of that money, use it for opportunities where we can match grants. Right, get more money from it, some opportunities that we'll have going forward. But should we be spending it on a normal maintenance part of a building or something like that? And it was like the Straighten brought it up, and I agree. So that's why we sent it back to the Board of Finance, because this is something that clearly should come out of a capital non-recurring account. But I understand the sensitivities because we have ARPA money. I just wanted to kind of like put that out there because, you know, we've worked well together with ARPA money through the budget process, and we will continue to do so. But this was, I think, to me, clearly something that the building needed, and it was something that would come out of capital. So that's why it came your way. It was really kind of a bipartisan effort on the Board of Selectmen that we thought we should, you know, kick it over here.
I'll start. I mean, is there any other greater needs? I get there's some VCT tiles damaged,
Yep.
and I know we have attic stock and we've changed them. I mean, is there not anything more important? The cupola's getting ready to blow off, you know, I mean.
Cupola is a big issue. Yeah,
Okay.
I think about that all the time.
So-
There are plenty of needs, definitely plenty of needs. I think especially with the tile issue, I mean, that's a safety. That's top, you know, I know you can say, well, the cupola on top's a safety need because everything blows off with your rack. But we'll be insured. With what happens out here, that's a wrong kind of thing to happen. And that's why, you know, I don't see many safety needs. I mean, other things that we need to spend money on, if I'm just candid. I really should have fought for that half-year body for building maintenance. I mean, we desperately need building maintenance stuff done. And we're working on it. But other than that, let's just the average maintenance stuff. There's a number of capital projects that I'd love to get done over time. This is the one that comes to mind that's a safety issue. And it's small, it's manageable, you can get a bite out of it. And we got much bigger discussions about capital plans. That's why I found this one so important. And the other one's a small number. Yeah, it's an energy efficiency thing. I'm thinking we're gonna get return on investment a little bit from that. So that's why we changed it.
So has it been on the capital list then?
So it was on the capital plan for 23-24. municipal center and linoleum floor repairs for $75,000. And look back a couple of years ago, we used to have a line item just in the capital plan under building maintenance to like $70,000 a year, and it just said municipal center improvements. This building was redone 25 years ago, and a lot of the areas haven't been touched since. We've done some stuff like the carpeting 5 or 6 years ago in the town clerk's office was a trip hazard, same thing with Park and Rec. They were redone, but generally, we haven't touched much of this building. In the 12 years I've been here, I think those are the like 2 main things that we've done. So at some point, we got away from just having a line item in the capital plan that said municipal center improvements. And I think it started when Eric Swenson came on. And now, if you look at the building maintenance capital plan, municipal center floors, boiler, cupola, elevator, HVAC, a bathroom in the basement. Then you go out a year, you got another elevator, you got roof replacement here. So he got away from just a general line that was supposed to be like carpets and those safety things and put all the big ticket items in there. And at some point, some of the smaller ticket items kind of went away from it. So,
Well, 47 is a big ticket item.
yeah, no, I agree. But the 47 was the floor and that was on here for 75. Because I think when he put the 75 number, I think it included doing the hallway over here by the assessors and the town clerk. And when they looked at it, they said that floor at this point doesn't need to be replaced. So don't replace something that's not really end of life.
I thought I read in the minutes that a portion of the money that was set aside for the front hallway and the locker reduced the 75 to the 47. Was that not what
No, I mean, we were looking at that money we thought we would have,
okay, so
but we're doing a, well, the 73,000 was for all of it. That was gonna be all of, which is higher than what, I guess they've gone back and they've looked at this number now. Because we were looking for 73,000 for the entire thing. So is the 47,000? Yeah.
Just for
Yeah.
that.
yeah, I think the 75 was this hallway too, Brad. Didn't you just
Right.
say that?
Yeah.
And now if you just do
Probably,
that,
yeah.
it's 47.
We'll go back and get the. Oh, this is separate.
Yeah, I thought I read minutes that
Yeah.
they were gonna take some extra money from the,
So, but that was the initial, when they're thinking about funding it through ARPA. Was the front hall was approved for X amount of dollars and there should be $70,000 left. They don't have that final number yet. And then Rich made the point of, if it's maintenance, why are we using ARPA?
so even if there was money left over, we shouldn't be using that money left. It should go back into our.
Yes, and that's what brought it to the Board of Finance.
So Brad, why was it originally considered to come out of ARPA funds? What was the justification originally to use ARPA funds?
For the, I think because they had money left and they were like, we have this other issue that's related. And at the time that it first came up, the vendor was still here working on the floor. And then in typical government form, it's taken so long to get to this point that
He left.
he left. They're actually back, they were back today working on something with the bathrooms, but
Yeah, and they did cut out a piece of this when they went back and looked at it. They kept the number down to 27,000 for a piece of the hallway. And then to 20,000 for the piece of the way back. So that's why it's a lot less than the 75, because we cut out more of the project. They says, and then the 17,200, the next one has always been the same number.
So this just so it's from this corner. Okay.
From the.
Corner, going straight down past Park and Rec.
Yeah.
And then heading towards P and Z, the end,
Yes,
and not to the
Is that right?
gymnasium.
Yeah.
Not the gymnasium one.
Well,
no,
to,
so it's not.
to next door, to the, where IT is.
Yep.
Because the rest of the hallway from next door to the gym would be taken care of supposedly with a locker room renovation.
Right.
Oh, you mean,
That's-
it's not done, but it's the next.
That's the next project once they move on.
As well as the other side of the GP room entrance, that to the gym would also be done with a locker
Yeah.
room.
And frankly, that part's not near as dramatic as this front section. You know, if you go walk it, you'll see where the tiles are all kind of coming up. You can't buff the floor anymore because more pieces of the tile keep coming up. It's just one of those that somebody's gonna take a face for that, you know, so that's why this kind of came up.
So was it out to bid? Was there only, the only one guy looked at it for the
No, so,
47?
so because it was small, we didn't put it out to bid because we had the same contractor who already just did the same tile in the front of the other project.
But he's gone now, so is he gonna
Yeah.
hold that number or
My
mobilization
understanding is they
again?
will hold the number.
So, the contractor was BMP, but that was through Gordian, and Gordian had gotten the state. Had done this bid through the state years ago, that bid out like, how much is it to install a toilet? How much is it to install a square foot of tile? So the pricing was based on that. So I think that's why they went with them initially for the front hall. Is because all that was done through them. Through state bid.
We got it.
What else is coming from Sienna? I mean, what else are you like, what are you gonna have whack us with next month from Sienna? Like, that's my concern. You know
Well,
what I mean?
considering we
Like,
haven't
so,
waxed DNR with really anything.
I,
This
Well, I know,
is the
but-
first time we've come to something and, you know, let's say at the end of the day.
I'm not even just saying from you, I'm
Yeah.
saying across the board, cause I
What's the
like.
next fire truck?
Well, listen,
Right,
well,
where's the next
listen,
fire
that's
truck,
something.
where's the next police, where's that, so where is that overall capital non-recurring so that we
Yeah.
can do our job properly in being able to allocate the funds? Right, you know, I mean, that's my concern with
Sure.
turning around and saying, yes, let's go ahead and approve some, you know, whatever, $65,000 tonight, because then where's the next one, without seeing everybody's overall.
Big picture.
And maybe
Yeah.
I missed it, that's what
No,
I'm saying,
I-
but if
Well,
there's
so where
a big
you-
picture.
Yeah, where you've seen it really is on the capital,
Yeah, it's
right?
right
The capital plan. you look at
Right, I
capital
know
plan,
I've
those are the
seen
things
that, I'm
we've all
saying
gotta do.
like, but
The
we
question
need
is,
it, but we can't.
the
fund
question
all
is
of
with the
that.
capital, no, yeah,
Right.
what we haven't figured out
Right.
over time, right? I mean, there are many things we keep kicking down the road, like the boiler, for instance, many times. Thank God the old boiler worked, right? Because we lost a boiler and that's been quite a bit. But there were a lot of things on the capital plan we have to, as a group,
Right,
as a board of selectmen and a board of finance, figure out how to pay for. To your point, fire trucks. And I'll throw this out, one of the things we are starting to do are those discussions about how we do paramedic service. So starting those discussions, and then at some point, there'll be a joint meeting between the board of finance, and board of selectmen, to kind of take all the data, put it together. That's something we gotta figure out. So I can't tell you, you know, what we're gonna need from CNR right now, because that's a capital plan. We haven't figured out where all that capital's coming from. And I think we, as a group, we're gonna have to do that, especially fire trucks and things like that long term.
Well, but to the fire truck, you ordered a study to figure out the needs of our community, which was the best thing you did right out of the box, so. You know, that answers the question, because we don't know what we need to put a fire out.
I agree.
That commission and that policy or that.
Not to jump all around, but is that company been hired and
They've
when?
not signed the dotted line yet.
Oh.
They came back with a higher price, and so I'm working on pushing it
I
back.
got you.
And just since the boiler came up, that is gonna be something that's coming in front of this board at some point. Sooner than later.
And
Does
in the
everybody-
building maintenance, it's on the capital?
It is on the capital plan. I think the one that was on the capital plan was the one that we're currently running on. So is everybody aware of what happened in this building?
Not really.
So this building it has two boilers. One was replaced 10 years ago, a high efficiency boiler, and that's when we run on natural gas. I think the other one runs on natural, it does run, they both run on natural gas. So the plan was when we did the high efficiency one, at some point we were gonna come back. Replace the secondary, the backup one with another high efficiency one. So we have the backup. The problem is, was it 2 months ago now?
Yeah, or 3.
The newer of the two went.
Well,
So
but it's under warranty, so it's good.
it's not under warranty. There is an insurance claim on it that we will get paid. I think the insurance claim is like 50 grand to repair it. We have a $10,000 deductible. So before we just go around and repair a 10-year-old boiler, we're in the process now of looking at options of, yes, we could just repair it and it would cost us 10,000 because that's our deductible. But now you've repaired a 10-year-old boiler. Does it make more sense to take that 40,000, look at what the needs are down there? And maybe you have $100,000 system replacement at some point, but instead of repairing it, you're taking the 40 from insurance.
60 to replace it.
Yeah. So I think we have a meeting next week on that. We've been working on that for a while. It's taken the insurance company time to get So that is a need that I anticipate will be coming in front of this board. Probably not for June, maybe for July.
Should we hold off on the floors then, so we have our money?
You have other CNR money, but I understand your point.
What is in the CR account right now?
I started to look that up.
And is it gonna have a
the
650 that we just funded it in your number?
The 650 won't hit it until, but I can.
January, or I mean, July.
Once I remember where I keep that.
One of the things that while he's looking, one of the things with the boilers that we're considering is that right now we have two, I'd say just large boilers. Old school, one's high efficiency, one's not. The idea was we were gonna go back and replace the old one. That's what's running the show right now. With the newer one, we're actually looking at a series of smaller boilers that come together. Possibly whether or not like 3 of these small boilers would be high efficiency and cover everything. And then maybe we wouldn't have to worry about a backup. That's something we're talking about. We just don't know if it'll really cover the building and we don't know the costs yet. But we're really trying to make an educated decision.
Is it steam or is it hot water? It's steam, isn't it?
That part's not water. Right?
I'm an accountant.
I know.
So Brad, are you saying that 82,000 that the building maintenance is requesting for a new boiler in the municipal center of 82,000 was gonna replace the old
I believe the plan was to replace the old one
into a high efficiency?
and into a new one, but now we're running on it. Luckily,
Right.
it's 70 degrees today and not running on it, but you're still doing hot water. I don't know. I think, no, we have separate hot water, electric hot water thing. I haven't updated this for a while because we were in budget in February, it looked like we had 810 unallocated in CNR. I don't know if that included the additional 200,000 that the board put in transfers. And that did not include the 650 for this year. So we're in 1.4 to 1.5 range.
Million.
Well, 1.4 to 1.6, because me and Frida's already doing the math in his head and going, that doesn't add up.
Don't be wrong, he's gonna call you out.
It'd be a sidebar.
I like to round down, so when they say 1.6, you go, oh, great, I thought it was only 1.5.
Okay. I can go either way, so if someone wants to make a motion, I guess.
Can I just ask?
Yes.
So I think Bobby Joe had a really good point, right? The
Right.
CNR is finite.
Right.
It's got what it's got in it right now, or you have to go back to a town meeting, put more money in there, which we're not gonna do.
Right.
But the ARPA money is available and justifiable for that purpose.
Debatable. Whether it's justified.
So you're saying.
You can
that-
justify anything, but I mean, I think when you're looking at all the other projects we're gonna have coming up. This is a building maintenance function. Right? This is maintenance of our front. I don't think that's what ARPA money really was intended for. When we have other big things that we need to do in town. Fire trucks, equipment, those kinds of things that we would get hit on, like from out of CNR. I think those are the things where we've spent the money. So I do feel like it's just, if you're looking at where CNR should be used, this is the perfect case. And we'll work with our money, because there's plenty of other things where people want to.
No, I don't,
That's why.
I don't philosophically disagree. I just think there's a lot of people who are gonna be standing in line for CNR money. And I guess the question is,
Well,
you know, that always
Yeah,
exceeds what we actually have.
and I also know that it's become a thing. That people line up for CNR, money, especially the fire department. Right? I don't understand why,
That what? I'm sorry. that's-
especially the fire department.
For equipment, CNR.
Perfect.
It's everybody piggyback, they know what account it is.
But I'm just kind of making the case that. This is what CNR is for. You know, it's when you have a budget, we don't budget for a lot of these things where we would have to borrow money or. You know, this is like, so we don't have to have a credit card anymore. I understand a lot of people want CNR, but at the same time, we've done things for fire and police. For instance, we've given each of the departments $150,000 towards 75 towards fire. 75 towards EMT for both departments. Just, there you go.
3 police cars.
Police cars, there'll be more fire stuff coming. I know that we need to look at. So those things make a lot of sense to kind of keep chipping away at. I don't know that we'll ever like pile a full-fledged fire truck out of something. I mean, I think that's a long-term plan that we have to decide like as a group where that money comes from. But right now, the money is, yeah, there is ARPA money. I just think those are the things it's used for, you know.
Right.
And what is the balance of ARPA money?
So the approved the date is 3,998,000, so $4 million of the 5,859,000 we got.
And that's after the
So
last.
it's-
There's 4 million spent or left.
approved. So 4 million approved, and we got 5.86, really.
Right, so we have 1.86, almost $2 million left.
Yeah.
Right.
That's not allocated.
2 million left.
Yes,
That's
Yeah.
not allocated.
yes.
Yeah. And some things, like, one of the first things that was approved in September of 2021 was a small business assistance program, was approved for $350,000. The spent on it is $265. And I don't think they're doing anything else with it. So at some point,
They actually are.
are they, all right, so, but there are things that might come in under. That would come back to it, so.
Cynthia, is there anything you'd like to add? Anything like to add, Cynthia? No, thank you. I got you.
No, I'm good.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure I didn't miss you. Bob?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, like, no, so I'm going back to. I'm not opposed to CNR. I'm not asking for it to go back to ARPA. I think I'm just trying to grasp. Overall, what else? I just think it's
Well, I mean, if you look.
It's
at-
almost like we're treating CNR as like an emergency fund, is that what, I mean, is that the idea of it?
We-
It's like, okay, we need this, let's pull this, because that's how it seems. It's how these requests kind of come about, we don't really have a plan for CNR, and I know. You can't plan for an emergency, and you
Well,
can't
let's talk about the
prepare, you
CNR.
can't, right, you can't plan for. Certain safety issues, so that's where my concern comes from.
How I would think of CNR, and I'm only one of 7 on this,
Right.
and not to mention 3 on the board of selectmen and Brad. But we started trying to increase capital non-recurring because we knew. And eventually I'm gonna come through a motion on this. We knew that in a town that has $2 billion of assets, right, when you look across the entire balance sheet. Stuff was just going to break. We didn't know which plow truck was going to break, but we knew one was going to. We didn't know which town vehicle was gonna catch on fire.
Right.
But one did. And so we needed to have this little savings account. Because we just knew those kind of things were going to happen. So I think that, again, just one person is not necessarily an emergency fund. But an amount of money putting aside that we know we will need. But we came up with this number after years of seeing the trend. Right, for a long time, capital non-recurring was 25, and it was woefully I do kind of think of it in that terms, that it's, we know stuff
You
is
know it's
going to
gonna
break.
happen, right?
And so to Dan's point, I am persuaded by the fact. This is like one of a number of other X, Y, or Z projects that we're gonna have to pay. And I agree that paying for it out puts us in a position where we used one-time funding for recurring items, and we are really underestimating what the real need is for the town. And so it does seem to me that it is of a nature of just stuff, great stuff that needs to get fixed. And so, I don't know if it's at that point, but I would make a motion that we accept the move to have this be paid out of capital non-recurring, because that's a kind of, in my mind, that's a kind of, that is the nature. of this. And to Dan's point, when he started, so we got a lot of stuff that's coming down the pike, and so there's gonna be plenty of time.
There's other needs, right?
There's plenty of time to figure out whether it's ARPA, whether it's capital non-recurring. Hopefully it's not raising short-term debt again. But I think we're gonna have more needs than whether, than what we have in ARPA and capital non-recurring. So from a standpoint of just matching recurring nature items to capital non-recurring, I'd make a motion that we do pay for this on a capital non-recurring.
Okay, yes. Cynthia, please. Thank you.
I'm just thinking that the sticking point for me with the CNR has always been that, they come little piecemeal things, we need this, we need that. And I think we had talked about having, department heads kind of flesh it out so we know what's coming down the pike. Like, obviously these needs were known for a while. And I agree with Bob, you know, what CNR can be used for, but I just think that we need to have a bigger picture of for every budget year of what to expect, anything that can be predicted, do you know what I'm saying?
This is on the list.
Yeah. It's,
That's what the capital plan is supposed to be. But then obviously things get out of order as things become higher needs.
I'm speaking more about the capital non-recurring, because those are things where, you know, we, like the handheld radios and just things that just come up all of a sudden, oh, really? It just seems like there should be more predictability in certain things, you know, like with their lifespans of equipment or whatever, because that's the things that keep coming up for CNR. That's just my.
Yeah, I wanted to answer that through you to Cynthia. If you take
Yes.
a look at the most recent things that we've done ARPA with, like we've talked about, there were things that were on the capital plan. We talked about, you know, the money for the radios, that was on the capital plan. We knew that was up. It just reached a boiling point because when a radio would go down, they couldn't use the car anymore.
and Dan, I said, the
Okay,
police,
bad example. Forget the radios. Bad
Those,
example.
when we looked at the vehicles, for instance. Prior, when we were doing the budget, those were all things that were on the capital plan. So the capital plan is the roadmap going forward for what the needs are from the departments. So you can't just look at CNR and say, we're gonna pre-budget it necessarily. I mean, you
No, I don't mean pre-budgeted. It's there's capital and there's capital non-recurring. Those are two specifically different things. The capital, in my opinion, what I understood it to be is, you know, major projects. And the CNR, things that come up, you know, you buy a truck, you buy radios, you buy whatever. So that's all I'm talking about, is just to, because some of those things were surprises. I'm talking about the past 3 years or so, 4 years, since we have, I think the CNR is a great idea. But I think that people come up with things that they were a surprise to me. I don't know, maybe I'm not paying attention, but I just think that there are things that can be known in advance, a little more in advance than they are right now. That's all. No big deal.
Cynthia, what we tried to do with the capital plan, and it coincided with going from $225,000 to 500, I think, to 600, then maybe 650 or maybe 500. Whatever the progression of the CNR account was, to then try to take care of some of the capital items, because in the past during the budget, it would be on the referendum, $1.3 million. And it
Right.
5 things, and then it would go to short-term debt. And I think some of the thing is trying to use the CNR account to pull off those items before they go on what's been termed like the town credit card. So the capital list is supposed to be everything that we anticipate capital-wise we're gonna need for the year. Some departments are better at that than others. And then
Right.
obviously break, and then things like a 10-year-old boiler we didn't anticipate having to replace. And now we do. You know,
I'm not talking about things that explode or are going to explode.
I understand, but the capital plan in theory, if it's done right, is supposed to be. Include almost everything that should come out of could come out of CNR. Obviously, we don't put like 3,000, sometimes CNR is a $3,000 item.
I hear you. I'm just registering an observation. I hear you loud and clear.
all right, so Bob made a motion, I believe, for the 47,000. I think we need to keep these separate from the blinds. Is that correct? So do we have a second for Bob's motion?
Seconded.
Okay, so we have a second. Any other discussion on the 47 to replace the floors? For everybody's mind, all in favor? Aye. Aye. The record show unanimous. Would somebody like to make a motion? I think it's pretty much the same discussion on the blinds for the energy saving.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second on the?
I'm sorry, was that to approve it or discuss it?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, good.
Oh, you still want to discuss? Okay, so we're going to discuss the blind for the 17-2. Do we have a second?
Approval of the, going to approve it.
Okay, so we're going to approve it. So do we have a second on his approval
Yes.
to approve that 17-2? Bob and
Reciprocity.
okay, thank you. All right, so any other discussion on the 17-2 for the blinds? And Dan, you just explain to us, that's this whole side of the
It's the
building,
whole front side of the building, both floors.
tax collector, blah, blah,
They
blah.
don't, and they'll go to a, more shade.
Yep.
And so these break fairly easy. So we found some really good shades that will work.
That would include the gymnasium as well.
No, that, yeah, because that's all a big, long.
There's no blinds down there anyway on those.
No, I think
plates
it's
of glass, right?
right.
Yeah, the kids were destroying.
Yeah,
Right,
they're-
so
Well,
so
they're-
any office, so it's almost from your office, Dan, really to the,
Well, it's actually on the backside too.
oh,
Yeah, it's front of it.
The building department.
Building department.
Planning and zoning, yeah.
also on the other side, the highway department too, or just?
Yeah, well, actually, I don't know if the highway department's on it, just planning, zoning and BOE.
The BOE office is excluding the meetings.
And then from yours
And
down.
these are pretty much
Fall,
all on
yeah.
this side.
Yeah.
So these are just curtains, it's not tints,
Blinds.
Blinds.
It's not, no balances,
no tint on the window, no new windows, just blinds.
One
Well,
open.
17, you don't get a lot.
Well, I agree, that's why.
I know, that's why we're being frugal.
Any other discussion?
I have discussion. So,
Yes.
so I think there was great discussion on the 47 and the floors. I think the floors, there was a good case. I always thought the floors were shiny. I walked deliberately down them today and said, wow, these things are falling apart. I think it's a trip hazard. I totally get it. I totally get Dee and Bobby Joe talking about, we're gonna run out of CNR. So for all of the reasons I just stated, I would not be in favor of spending the 17.2. I would try to figure out in the future where we could find that money or savings to pay that. That's
Well,
my opinion.
I'd like to know from the board of finance for a second, but where do we get it? Where do we get that money? Now, by the way, I may get some money from what lost and found from the state.
How about those nippers?
Well,
Yeah, no, we get
Yeah,
five
there you
cents,
go.
yeah.
You get the money.
Tampa?
We are getting good money, but you have to use it for certain, it's
Can't buy
restricted
blinds.
use.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I understand completely, listen, we need to be frugal and smart about it, but we have very little avenue to save or get money or grow money. But when these kinds of projects come along, the only place I have to turn is over here. Unless we can dig up something from somewhere, and we'll try, right? But I understand where the previous first selectman came from, because now I'm looking at a budget, and there's things I need to do. When it comes to fixing things in our buildings, we can only go so far. So, hence, I'm here. You know,
My fear is that the CNR list is really, really long. And the expectation of anybody that comes to present to us, they're gonna get a yes out of us.
Yeah.
Before we spend $17,000 on blinds for the
Yeah.
offices that have blinds. I certainly would think that we would spend money fixing some of the sidewalks downtown. Where, you know, ladies with strollers have a really hard time
Well, let's-
getting over.
Yeah, let's talk about
Yeah.
that. Let's talk.
I mean,
about
so,
that. No,
what-
talk about it.
so I
We're
don't
in
mean
the
that's,
middle of a-
that's not on the agenda, but what I mean is, I think the
Right.
town has lots of needs, and I certainly think that we could fill
I understand.
a higher priority need with 17,000.
I understand because there's a lot of needs. We're working on grants to do the sidewalks downtown as we speak. Whole big parking mobility study, trying to get the state involved. Those are big numbers. We might have a piece that we have to take into the town. Hence, maybe that is an ARPA thing down the line. But again, when it comes to, you know, a project of this size, you know, for $20,000, I don't have anywhere to turn and our buildings are falling apart. So that's, you know, that's on you guys. If you want, you know, want to partner on these things, we need them done. I don't think we're asking for something crazy. And to your point, we have created an expectation when I was on the board of finance that people will all come here and get a yes. And that's not always the right thing either.
Well, 'cause we're gonna run out of money.
Capital, because every piece of capital equipment.
Right.
Like we have to be smarter as a town and how we budget for these capital needs. We have a capital non-recurring plan. We have done nothing to figure out how we're gonna pay for those things. We just kind of fix it as it goes along, it's capital non-recurring, or wait for things to break. You know, so I don't know, unless we have a way to work together and figure out a budget that really reflects our needs. I mean, I thought that's what capital non-recurring was for when things break, that are capital items, instead of borrowing money to do it or putting on a credit card, that's what we do. So. I mean, I'm saying it's a need, it's a smaller need, but it's a need, and it's something we get return on investment, so. I feel like I made my case, I'll go with whatever the board of finance.
Can I ask one question before?
Yeah.
You're gonna go there first.
Yeah.
I think it would be directed towards Bob. You were the author of the CNR. It was under your leadership that you created a CNR account. Was it your idea that you would never bond for a $2 million fire truck and we'd always find the money in CNR or something like that? We were gonna go get the money anyway, borrow.
Yeah, I think, John, it was frankly along the lines of what Cynthia was saying, right? We would bond large projects, buildings. And the hope was that we would, like a household, plan in advance for things that we knew we were going to have to buy. And I'll say this now, hopefully nobody will react negatively, but rather than we remember, right, we used to, in the early days, talk about capital non-recurring needing to get to $1 million.
Each year.
And that was just based on observation of what was actually happening. And so I think it was really meant a fire truck. Now with the fire commission in place, I think people understanding things better, the study that will eventually be done, will have a plan to be able to save money and not borrow for a fire truck. And so it was really capital non-recurring, those kinds of things were to cover those items. And this again, to me, is something that, and it maybe the 17.2 is kind of overstating it because it sounds like we are going to get some energy savings. But that this would be something along those lines, right? This crap that you know is gonna break, or
Gotta replace it, gotta maintain it.
you wanna keep your house, you know, the house is the biggest asset, you try to keep the house.
Well, it's like, yeah, we have a pretty substantial account for the schools. We don't have a really substantial account for ours. You know, this is a pretty big building, it's all.
I thought about that today. Right.
Yeah, things are breaking. To your point, you brought up the cupola. Yeah, that's a major concern of mine, believe it or not, because I'm convinced we're gonna get banged by a hurricane this year, and I'm worried about it. So we'll try to figure it out.
Is there? Do you have a number or do you have an idea of any type of cost savings with the new blinds versus not doing the new blinds?
No, I think it's pretty difficult to, I mean, without paying a company to come tell us.
No, of course
Or
not.
getting Eversource, I mean, Eversource, we've actually talked about having Eversource come out again and give us a big, you know, energy savings talk. You know, the thing is, we did have an energy savings company working on the boilers and things like that, which that contract's expired. Now we might go somewhere else. By the way, that's part of the problem with the boiler, because that company may have rewired something incorrectly. Part of the insurance thing, so. But no, we gotta get, and you know, we have a lot of ways we can save money here with Eversource and solar and all these other things, but this was one of those, that was kind of one of those common sense things when we had talk, and a lot of the blinds are broken. You know, it kind of just made sense.
So there's blinds are broken and the only benefit, I'm sorry, there's a little bit of benefit, there may be some energy savings.
Right.
Besides replacing
Yeah,
broken
Because when
blinds.
broke the blinds, well, I think these blinds are a lot harder to replace too now.
Yeah.
They've been around quite a while.
1990 call, they want them back.
We
Can
can
I-
back, so we're good.
Can I just say one other thing about the CNR? We'd be really hard pressed, because we haven't gotten CNR up to $1 million, to buy a ladder truck from CNR at this point. And that's where the hope was our fund balance might pay for some of those instead of having to bond it. And that's where our fund balance could save us from having to bond the high school HVAC. But there's only, that well's only so deep if
You can only buy
pull,
one, right?
Yeah. the firing range, the HVAC, you know,
Can't afford all, right?
and the other big thing that at some point is gonna come up is the school roofs. Gonna be $1.5 million a school that wasn't just renovated to do a school roof, and they're aging out. I think they're off their warranty now. We're not jumping up and down right away going, we need to do it, because it's off, it's at its 20 years,
Doesn't
doesn't
mean
mean
it's
it's bad.
Right.
But it's on their capital list. For 1.7, 1.7, 1.5. Just in school roofs. So.
Cynthia, was there anything you wanted to add on the 17.2?
No, it's 1 o'clock in the morning here, so I'm kind of half dead, but I'm listening.
Right, okay. All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. Any other discussion on this? Let's try everybody, all in favor on the blinds?
Aye.
Aye. Let the record show unanimous. Good salesman, David.
Yeah, no, because I was a nay.
You were a maybe.
Well, And one thing, listen, one thing I will also commit, I will commit to an open conversation about ARPA. An open conversation about grants and things that we're trying to do to mitigate costs long term. Because I think that's part of the deal, of working together. So thank you.
I appreciate that.
Great. I'd accept the motion to adjourn.
No, we have
trouble.
We have the Comptroller's report.
Oh, geez.
So there was a question,
Wow, I'm usually, yeah.
just so everybody. He asked about the firing range. I missed the end because they started talking, but what was your question?
So the question is, I know it's approved, right?
Yeah.
And they're supposed to be building this, but they haven't taken the money for this.
But so when I was talking about, we're talking about the 6/30/22 fund balance, because that's the last audit report. They have spent some of it. They haven't spent all of it. We don't have a final number until the project's done. Because if we remember when this board approved it, at the time, we thought it might be in the more 1.1 to 1.3. I haven't been following where the public side building is at it. They have an ability to go up to 1.4. So when I look at the fund balance possibilities, I take the whole 1.4. But they haven't spent all of it because there was a lead time on the actual target system. And I think last I heard, they're still arguing about how they're gonna do the HVAC. But I haven't gotten an update on
Well, wasn't
that.
there a big push? They had to put a deposit down and
Yeah,
that's why
so
we needed to,
We've done,
Was of the essence, right? Like,
Right,
the-
yeah,
the whole-
right,
the
remember?
Cost of the.
That was for
equipment
the sale.
More expensive if we waited longer, so
Right.
it's been a while now, right? When-
yeah, so it's been ordered,
Oh, it has
but
been.
there's a lead time on it.
so, but we're locked in on that price. That's why they
For
held the
the,
gun to our
yeah,
head.
for the targeting system.
But that was 80, that was a very high percentage.
It was like, that was in the 700,000 to 800,000 of it, so that was a big chunk of it.
You want to give your report, Brad?
Everybody's favorite.
I love this part.
All right, revenue right on top. I tried to make it a little bit bigger. But
Thank
you
you.
know, we try to get, nice summary sheets that aren't multiple pages.
Revenue or bigger funds?
Well, I want bigger revenues.
I think you sound about fun.
So the collection rate for the tax collectors at 97.42. The prior year for the end of April was 98.4. We're right where we need to be on it. Again, that's just tax collection. As I spoke of earlier, we got the additional money from the state. I don't think it's on here yet. Oh, we did get all the equal cost sharing from the state for the schools. So that came in $24,000 more than we budgeted. It's minor in the grand scheme of things, but that is always one of the big question marks. Because it's a big chunk of money from the state, the last thing we want is to set a budget anticipating $8 million in ECS and they go, we're gonna give you 7, which was a concern and happened a number of years ago. I don't know if you might have been on, was that pre you on the board? Just came on. Yeah, so, but it's always, I always feel a little bit better when we actually get the money, even though they said we're gonna get the money. So revenue's in a good spot. Expenses, town insurance, we've made all those payments, but we haven't charged water and sewer yet for it. So that's why that's over. Probate's over because we bill Reading, Ridgefield and Newtown at the end of the year. Registers is over. We've had extra referendums this year. I will let this board know, and the PUC is gonna find out Thursday night. The referendum for the Bergstrom Wells was $10,000 something. It was strictly for a water project. We charged the water department for it and not the general fund. If we were doing, if it had timed out that it was a referendum we were doing anyway, we wouldn't have charged them for it. We're doing the work anyway.
Yeah, you would have.
But it was strictly for water. I don't know how unhappy they will be with me with that, but we will find out Thursday night. Park and Rec looks like it's over already and it's related to salaries. Sebby and I are digging into that. We were digging into that some today and yesterday. We're not sure why that is, but I know there was the highway department contract is settled, but that's not enough to put that over. I don't know if something was missed when she set her budget for the minimum wage increases. But there's been one for the last 4 years.
No,
So
I know, I'm saying, but
yeah.
the next bump isn't until July.
the next jump is actually June 1st. June first, it goes up to $15.
It was one of the. two.
Yeah, and that's the last, because they've been doing it every 11 months.
Yeah, no,
So
I-
last year was July, the year before, yeah.
Sounds like somebody's getting a raise.
Not me. I gotta give the damn thing.
So we're looking at that.
17 people.
And the other one that's been an issue is fleet maintenance. It's over right here by 62,000. If you look back at the detail, it's the highway trucks. But we have a truck that was approved in 2 years.
Two cabin chassis.
Yeah, but even before that, the last, pulling it up right now.
Sounds like we
The Board of Finance approved a Class 8 plow truck purchase. Not the body, and I think we might have done the body later on. For $103,000, March of 2021.
I know.
We have not paid that bill yet, because we have not gotten that truck yet. So unfortunately, those delays has caused our fleet maintenance of the existing trucks. Be over by a good chunk of change. But it was all to keep the trucks on the road. And knock on wood, it might have been worse if we had a bad year. We had a good year for this. So.
But
That's
we
where
still
we're at.
spent 63,000 over a
That's-
good year.
Well, the snow, we had a good snow year.
It would
otherwise-
repairs, of course.
Yeah. The repairs have gone up. One of the things that I need to get from the highway. Superintendent, Bob Dibble, is if he's paid for all of his sand and salt. Cause that might be something that we come to the board with to try to do more roads in this year. With that money. We're getting up against it. It's been on my to-do list, but there's 6 million things on my to-do list, and I apologize that I didn't get it for this meeting. I'm just looking at what he's paid so far, but I need to ask him about. I just want to make sure all his bills are in on it.
Outstanding. Yeah.
So, but I will make myself a note to follow up with him. And try to get that, if there's more plowing or paving money we could do, because we didn't use as much sand and salt this year. We will bring that to the Board of Finance, because the Board of Finance would have to transfer that money and not have to go to a town meeting for it.
Dirty tax.
Is the money for that truck somewhere, or is that
It's-
coming out of capital not recurring?
It's come out of capital non-recurring. When I tell you that there was like the 1.6 number I talked about. It's
Unallocated.
allocated. I always
It's
talk
already
unallocated. Yeah.
Just one quick question, Brad. You've been appropriately highlighting utilities.
Yeah.
Exposure. It looks like we're on, but we're 10 months into the year. If I do simple 2.6 million divided by 10, 263 a month means we're gonna be over by about 263.
Probably not, because so much of the utility costs is natural gas. And we're past the natural gas heating of the schools. We'll probably be over a little bit, but we're not looking like last year when we were over hundreds of thousands of dollars. My hope is, it sounds bad that it's a hope that we're only over like 100.
Yeah.
And it might be closer to 2, but it's all depending on the timing of what bills come in. But being past the heating season. Hopefully all the heating bills are paid. For the most part, you still have some cold days and those school buildings are big. So you run through a lot of natural gas. We are locked in for that. We did just lock in, and I don't have the number memorized. We did just lock in gasoline. Or diesel. One of them we just locked in because we'd used all of our previous allotment and we locked it in lower. The other update I have for the board that was more budget related, but we'll talk about it here. Kerma, our insurance carrier for workers' comp, liability, auto and property. They were talking about a 3% increase in the liability, auto and property lap. He told me that I think the day before we set the mill rate, but it wouldn't matter at that point anyway, that they're coming from 3% down to 1.5. Because I always have them look at it. It's an $8,000 difference. It wouldn't really change the mill rate at all, even if we had the number a month earlier. But it does, if they go up 3% next year like they can, you're not paying that 3% on that additional 8,000. So, just want to make the board aware of it, that we do try to beat these people up as much as we can. They save every dollar we can.
It's almost half the volume, still, John.
The NIP money, because it came up earlier. We've collected, the town of Bethel's gotten roughly $15,000 so far.
From what's that?
the little nips.
We're selling.
No, so they, so. Come on, right. So 2 years, I think it was 2 years ago, the state set up for every one of those bottles, there's a 5
It's
cent,
not a deposit, it's a tax.
it's a tax that the state collects. And then depending on where the little bottle was sold, it goes back to the towns. It's not in our general fund because it's a restricted fund. You have to use it for recycling and those kind of things. So I think it could be used for even some of the opioid stuff. So I know social services and the health department's looking into. Within what we can use it for, what's the best use of it?
And let me chime in, we also have a commission called Sustainable Bethel. Sustainable Bethel was what used to be the Energy Commission, right? Really the goal of that commission, and we're trying to build it back up, Matt created it in May, is to have a way to support sustainable Connecticut. And when I say sustainable, this isn't just climate change stuff, right? There's all these different things that we can do as a town that really, bring people in from all sides to do things that make Bethel better. Some of that NIP money can be spent on some of those things too. So there are options that we can do that will help the town, and as we go along, we can.
And I think it can be used for some of the recycling stuff.
Yep, recycling. Which right now, we just received a grant, I'll tell you, that actually got approved. There was a press conference today, which I skipped. But I think we got the neighborhood of $42,000 to put together a food scrap program at the transfer station. And what it'll do is, we can go out there now and people who use the transfer station can use a separate bag for food waste, which will be a lower rate. So it's heavier items that they get rid of now for 25 cents a pound. And it'll probably be in the neighborhood of 10 cents a pound with a bag. So it's an opportunity, for folks who do want to do food scrap, organic, those kinds of things. In this particular case, it will go food scrap to biofuel. That's what ours will do. So it's a pilot program. We'll be off the payment for it. We charge.
I misspoke earlier because my brain is jumbling two different funds. We're also getting from the opioid settlements, that money has specific uses. So when I said the NIPS money was being looked at by social services and health, that didn't sound right when my brain finally clicked it. It's the opioid money that has restricted use. The NIPS money also has restricted use on recycling wise sustainability. So there's two different buckets of money coming in that aren't general fund money because it's restricted use stuff. So it just, once my brain clicked in, why would the bottles have anything to do with
We're
it?
gonna hire somebody for 30,000 to spend the 15. That's what it sounds like.
So I'll need to throw one thing in there. It's okay, Mr. Chairman. And this will help somebody who sleep at night. I did just sign a letter back to the state that we are supposed to get $17,000 back and things that were lost. You know how they have the lost accounts and such like. We supposedly have $17,000+ that are owed to Bethel. So I'll let you know when we get it.
So we paid the fines.
I mean, I have a couple of
Checks in the mail.
So we paid the fines. I mean, we'll know when we get it.
Sustainability,
I just did that yesterday, so trying to make money.
how many do we get? Energy efficiency?
I don't have it offhand, that one,
Like,
but
or-
Looking for money.
no, I think it's closer to the 50 range, but there's, as they settle. CVS, there's one, then there's another one, then it's different buckets. I know you're interested, I can either look it up or it's all out there too of what those are. Because the Connecticut AG talks a lot about it. So.
I'd make a motion to accept Brad's report tonight. Do I have a second?
Second it.
We have a second, all in favor on Brad's report, any discussion?
Aye.
Aye. Excellent, I would accept the motion to adjourn.
Removed.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
The record show. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, Cynthia, for staying up late.
Invoice.